Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to a new brand story here on ITSPmagazine. And this is where we get a chance to talk to founders of companies, developers of products, and deliverers of service that hopefully at some point help the business grow and do so safely. So we want business to generate revenue and do it in a way that makes sense. Of course, we often look at new technologies as well. And today I'm thrilled to have Viktor on from Screenly. Viktor, how are you?
Good. How are you, Sean?
Doing great. Doing great. Great to connect remotely here. We saw each other in Black Hat not too long ago, and
That's right.
we had a good chat there about all kinds of things, including bug bounties and vulnerability management. And I think I want to start by saying this first. Kudos to you and the Screenly team for being so open about what, the topic we're going to talk about today. A lot of organizations try to stick their head in the sand and kind of shove the story aside. Um, that doesn't build trust, which this particular industry needs to
Yes.
build. And so I'm grateful for you to share this story. Of course, you wrote it up, so we'll link to your LinkedIn post and your blog so people can get all the nitty gritty details we don't cover today. Um, so we're going to get into that event and how you handled it in a moment. First, a brief word about you, and then maybe kind of the elevator pitch of what Screenly is and what you're trying to solve.
Yeah, sure. So Screenly is a secure digital signage platform, and that's really is the fancy word for display management. And what we basically help customers do is to display content on screens in their offices or out in the public. We make sure that devices are secure, updated, and we take care of the whole life cycle. And that's really what we do. We make content management easy for screens.
And give me an example of where that matters. I can
Yeah.
picture hospitals, right, where perhaps
Yeah, healthcare
things
is a
might be.
big
Yeah.
customer base. Fortune 500, like we have customers like NASA trusting us for their signage. So basically, financial services being another big one. But basically, the big picture is that companies that care about security. There are plenty of options out there for signage. A lot of them don't really prioritize security, and I think we're going to dive into what actually it means to prioritize security in this little episode here, right? But we really like security is our DNA. It's not an afterthought. A lot of people they flash their badges, their SOC 2, their ISO, and yada yada. We've spoken of this before. It doesn't actually mean that you're secure. It just means that you passed a series of checkboxes. Security is a culture problem. We've prioritized that. We have built security into our culture, and I think today is really like the manifestation of that. Really, so I think that really sets us apart.
Yeah. And security isn't binary either. It's not on or off.
No,
It's not
no,
100%
and
or
it's never done.
it could be zero, I guess, but but
Yeah.
it's usually some number in between there, and organizations, some better than others, do their best to get it as close to 100% as possible. But things happen,
Yes.
and that's what we're going to talk about today. So what transpired? I think it's a little over a week ago now that this
Mm.
occurred. What transpired and how you alerted to? Maybe give us a big picture of what happened.
Yeah, so we introduced our bug bounty program about 2 months ago, I think, which has been I would say great success, and I would encourage other people to do that as well. We've done numerous pen tests over the years, and we found things in pen tests, we fixed things in pen tests, but a bug bounty program is a fantastic way to get like a continuous flow of pen testing, essentially, and so we've had some great findings there. But the particular event you're referring to happened last Sunday, so I think 7 p.m. Roughly Central European time or UTC actually. We got an email in our bug bounty program where somebody claimed that a large data set of our customers' data were in one of these public leak sites. So presumably then scraped from some darknet forum, presumably, and then aggregated up to this site. And that by itself is probably enough to scare any CTO or CEO a lot, right? So, and kudos to our team. We jumped from that right away. We began our investigation at 9 p.m. So 2 hours after this landed on a Sunday night, mind you, our investigation was already underway, and we start to validate the data, because you have to assume that it might be real, but it also might be just completely fake, right? And the data quality of leaks tend to vary a lot. So we started investigating this in kind of a clean room environment, going through data. First of all, asking the question like, does it even make sense, right? Does this actually, is this our data? Is this from our data at all? And we spot checked a few things, and we were able to find at least a few correlations, a few accounts that were in our system, and that was enough then to like escalate this, and like this went from like, oh, this is just a bogus report to actually this is a real report. We obviously we can't make a judgment call on that until we actually verified or invalidated the data. So we quickly compared the data set that we got reported. We wrote some custom tooling to correlate that data set with our real customer data set, or correlate with our data. And the initial dump was about 1,400 users, which, mind you, is less than 1% of our users, right? It's like a 0 point something percent of our users. So it's by no means a whole data dump, which would be devastating. But it was a big enough number that it's scary. So we started analyzing this, and we found that I think about 200 of the initial 1,400 ended up being users in our system. And as with most of these data leaks, there were a lot of duplicates. So after we've gone through and deduplicated the list, and we've gone through and sorted it and compared to our data set, I think we found about 200 users that actually ended up in our system, right? So 228 of these existed in our actual system. So, okay, now we went from 1,400 to 228, which is all right. Still a big enough number. It's not to be sniffed at, right? It's big enough number that makes you concerned. What we did right away was essentially do a password reset on all those accounts, so that we basically violated, we nullified the extent of the leak, right? So anybody who downloaded the list, they will be of no use anymore. So that we did that within, I believe, 2 hours of getting it reported. We had reset all the user accounts on a Sunday night to basically remove the attack vector that is this leak, right? And then we started diving more into the data, right? And we found that only 41 out of the 228 account we verified were actually had any activity in the last year. So that means that if you're looking at potential attack vectors or where this data could come from, that's an important variable, right? Because if it's something that happened, if all the accounts were either created or activity around the same time period, you could deduct some pattern, but we found no pattern whatsoever in the data as we looked at like last login and various activity data. And then perhaps more importantly, only 5 out of those 41 were actually paying users. So there were a lot of like older users that are not paying users or not having an active account, but that was not a very important variable there. But that was the start of the investigation on Sunday, and we started to get kind of that calmed your nerves a little bit, right? When you started like down.
First thing that comes to mind for me is how were there attributes in the data set that linked them discreetly? Because one thing I could think is, here's a bunch of data. I'm just going to go to any company and say, we found your data, right? And there's a chance that there's going to be some overlap, right? If it's a tech company and da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's why we're looking at patterns, right? See if there was some kind of pattern with all these accounts. But there's no way for us to really tell that apart, right? If yeah, you're absolutely right. I guess the percentage of if the account list was 10,000 accounts and 100 of those were real users, I guess that supports your argument more so. So absolutely, there is something that we're looking at. But the real accounts to the whole list is a key indicator of such attack, right? Or such scenario, rather, I guess. So that was something that we looked at, yeah.
So talk to me a bit about your bug bounty, because I think my joke, and I actually had Casey Ellis on the other day, is that everybody's running a bug bounty, whether they know a public bug bounty, whether they know it or not, right?
This is true.
Anybody can hit the site and find stuff, but you actually have a policy in place and a program running that says, here's the scope, here are the things we want you to
Yeah.
find. And so tell me a little bit about that and the value of that generally, perhaps surrounding this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the scope is very important. I mean, you need to define rules of engagement, and the same thing with any. If you engage with a professional pen tester, you tend to always define the barriers or the security parameters. What's in scope and what's out of scope. I think it's important to have that as part of your bug bounty program, because just because it's on your domain doesn't mean that it's in scope, right? Because that could be a third-party service, or that could be something else that is not entirely like within your control, right? So, we've defined the scope for our web app, largely speaking, as the scope for our bug bounty program. And then we've narrowed it down from there. And we have taken the standardized procedures of like we have a security.txt, which has our PGP keys. If you want to report something severe, we have an inbox that is monitored by more than one person. All those things are part of the program so that we have a system. And we've written a lot of internal tooling because it's a bit of tidal wave when you open a bug bounty program. We have received way more reports than we anticipated. And it's the one thing that's important to stress here is that managing a bug bounty program is not free. It's very expensive in labor. Whilst you do get a lot of interesting reports, you also do get a lot of garbage, particularly in the era age of AI. A lot of copy and paste, things that don't even make sense. But
Yeah.
you need a human to screen that, and that's expensive.
Yeah, exactly. So, talk to me a bit about were there any? I guess do you know the path in, how the data
Right.
was exfiltrated?
So we looked long and hard. We analyzed our logs. We tried to find some patterns, and we tried to figure out like where did this data come from. I mean, you're absolutely right in saying that it could just be like a random data set, and that just had to correlate with our user data. Now, I think if it's 200 out of 1400, I think that's unlikely. It seems to be far more targeted, right? So we went. Worst case scenario was like, is our backend compromised? Right, that's your worst case scenario. Which is why we're looking at like if there any correlation with the leaked data, and we found none there. But then we had this idea that maybe we're not the source at all. Maybe it's somewhere else, right? First of all, we look at like, did we have some JavaScript library in Google Tag Manager that triggered and sent data accidentally somewhere? Didn't audit on that. Couldn't find anything there at all. And then we started brainstorming a little bit like what else this could be. And then we randomly thought about Have Been Pawn, Troy Hunt's project. And we then looked at that data set and compared it to our data set to see if there were any correlation. And it just so happened that 99%-ish of the entire leaked data were in one out of three major breaches that had been reported to have been pawned. And the big important takeaway here is that these were not because of compromised servers. All three of these were in one of the stealer log dumps, meaning that the end customer devices were infected with some kind of malware, which then aggregated and then reported into a big leak. So the root cause, yeah, it was end user devices. Unfortunately, it's very, there are very few things we can do on our end to protect against that, right? Like we have a lot of mechanisms to improve security, but a lot of them are opt-in from the user, right? We have 2FA support and so forth. We have SSO support. But when we looked at data, like none of these users actually had 2FA enabled, right? So by a simple security mechanism, if you just have had 2FA enabled, that would have voided entire attack vector. But none of them had.
Yeah. So as we wrap here, and in the minute we have left, what's the big takeaway from you, and what would you leave folks listening with?
Yeah, so we took a long, hard look at ourselves and thinking about like what can we do to improve. Like if we offer features like 2FA and people are not using it, like what can we do then to improve the security posture and like kind of remove this entire attack vector? So what we are rolling out now is passwordless. So we go into magic links. So we're gonna get rid of password authentication altogether. And I think that's a good push in general. Like you can combine it with 2FA to improve security further. You can use SSO, but passwords, they're not good. Like people reuse passwords, and there's very little you can do about preventing that, right? You can check against lists and so forth, but it's not as secure as it should be. So our takeaway here is that the best way to solve this problem as a permanent fixture is to remove the attack vector altogether. So that's exactly what we're doing. I think we're going to be rolling that up next week as a first wave.
I love it. Well, Viktor, it's always good to see you, my friend, and
likewise.
Glad you're doing well with Screenly, and that you're running a bug bounty program to help you find some of these things and making that investment. And most importantly, I think being willing to share the story with folks to know that you don't have to run around with your hair on fire. You can actually have a moment of, all right, what's going on? Follow the playbook. Do rally the team in a way that makes sense and kind of sort through everything and come up with a good plan.
Yeah.
And so kudos to you.
Thank you. And having those run books from your SOC 2 or wherever compliance framework you use, they are helpful because it tells you what to do and just making sure you actually follow the playbooks as well.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Viktor, thanks again for sharing this, we call it a brand spotlight here on ITSP Magazine. A quick hit of a story, and it's an important one. So I appreciate you sharing that. And everybody listening and watching, do stay tuned for more brand spotlights as part of our brand story series on ITSP Magazine. And do connect with Viktor and the Screenly team, and I'll include links to your LinkedIn post and the blog so people can learn more. And obviously they can connect with you if they need secure screen signage. Secure signage, I should say. Good stuff. Thanks, Viktor.
Thanks for having me, Sean.